Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to this Aimless Wanderings vlog. Today we are looking at the final episode from Darker Paths, Martin's Last Spark, Part 2. So Martin's Spark Last 2, well for starters already stuff happened, so it's easily better than the first one, first part. Just for stuff actually happening. They go to Metabelis 14, have a chat with King Brian about what's going on. Then the Flickerer turns up. He tries to kill Ren. So as he's trying to kill Ren, he's killing lots of people in the meantime. Because, I don't know, even Tim says asks why he's so concerned with them. Well, he can just kill lots of people. And he's just like, you don't need to worry, I'll just restore life somewhere else. The universe will think you're raising havoc. So I guess the Flickerer's motive is to just try and get rid of as much life as possible so he can somehow get Ren. Even though, like I said, he could easily take someone else's life and just let her go. It kind of did that with Dynamite's ones. He's somehow so obsessed with Ren. It's like, maybe it was a key point in time or something, but I'm not sure. Maybe there'll be a bit more explanation why the Flickerer is so desperate for Ren in a later story, but at this point in time it's like an obsession with this one human. Who he could take another one's life. I mean, that sounds nasty, but taking life is nasty by the sounds of it. Even if he does restore it elsewhere. So the Flickerer kills everyone on Metabelis 14 because he's a dick. And the Doctor and his companions crash into the spaceship at the end of the universe. And they have to make their final stand. I will say this, I think Metabelis 14 should have made an appearance, another appearance earlier on in this wave. Because it's been, the last time we saw it was last wave with Good Pug Goes to War. I think there should have been another story beforehand, because each story, apart from Storyteller, kind of sets up everything in this wave. I think they should have done something to... I think they should have gone to Metabelis 14 for a bit. Just maybe popped in, and then that could have related to a bit here. So, like, an event in said Metabelis 14 story would have also have influenced this event, alongside the Good Pug Goes to War stuff. But the setup... Well, Multiple Velocity would basically get the alternative version of this final scene. Deadly Killer brings in Tim, and also sets up all of the Doctors a little bit. Corner of the Universe, we've got the Signman spaceship, Daleks of the Apocalypse, Ren is introduced as a companion, Flickerer, we get introduced as a Flickerer. This is in terms of a chronological timeline. Storyteller doesn't really do much, and 5 credits a month is the Doctor's big turning point. It's the big turning point where the Doctor pretty much turns, and then we come to the final stand in this story, as well as also all the setup for War of the Doctors and Pompous Redemption. But I do think there should have been a Metabelis 14 story earlier on in this wave. Even if it was just a scene, could have just done a bit of a tie-in, but we had to have the Storyteller instead, which was great. But Storyteller was a bit of a detour in this wave, especially when everything else was building up to Martin's Last Spark. But anyway, that's just the point I wanted to get across. And then we get the final scene, and it seems like the Doctor is about to be the hero again. He's going to be a hero, but then the Flickerer reminds him of Martin, and he just decides, fuck it, and lets Ren die. Spoiler alert. And then he's like, I'm alive! And he's overjoyed and pretty much becomes evil just because he turns out to be alive. Somehow. But he's evil now, so... yeah. But it's still a roller coaster ride of a story, and the stuff with Martin having to be sadly put down is really emotional. I don't know, Personally, it didn't make me as emotional as with Death to the Davros, but certainly they are on par with each other in terms of execution and writing of how it's dealt with, and Ren's death is quite shocking in a way, and it is quite a bit of a shock to the casual listener that the Doctor does decide to let her die, I suppose. But in the end, kind of makes sense in his character, especially at this point in his life. But it's all handled really well, and the acting is great. So overall, I'm going to give Martin's Last Spark Part 2 a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's completely perfect, but it's still a brilliant story. I think the emotion is very, like Death to the Davros, is very good. I don't know if I would say it's as good as Death to the Davros' one. I think it's because that story focused a bit more of it, whilst with this one it's only a few scenes. Even though we've known Martin for a longer period of time than Davros, in the audios of course. But still, I think also the fact that there is not as much Martin in the Wave because he's getting old. But if he had a bit more to do in the Wave, I think it could have been a bit more emotional as well. Because he's only in the first one. He's in the third one. He's mentioned in the sixth one, but he doesn't really do anything. He appears in the seventh one, just to go on a walk, and he's mentioned in the eighth and ninth ones, but we don't really see him again. And has just one last walk and the vet surgery in this one. So he's really not been doing that much. So that's another thing. I think another story could have dealt with one last adventure with Martin, besides the storyteller. And then, I think if this was a 12-episode series, then, as well as the Metebelis 14 story, you could also have one last adventure with Martin that may have also played with the Doctor's relationship with him. As well, the Metebelis 14 one could have done that too. But another story, but those two could have done a bit more of the Doctor's relationship with Martin, and maybe Tim and Ren's as well. So it's not quite as emotional because there wasn't as much Martin this year, and it's been quite a while since the other two waves. But the loss of Martin is still very sad, and it's brilliantly handled. We will miss that chubby little pug. R.I.P. Martin and Ren. You did well. And before we go, here's my quick ranking of the Darker Past episodes. So we got Mortal Pomposity, The Deadly Killer, The Corner of the Universe, Darkness of the Apocalypse Parts 1 and 2, Flicker, The Storyteller, 5 credits a month, and Martin's Last Spark Parts 1 and 2. So number 10 is Martin's Last Spark Part 1. It's just because nothing really happens, it's just talking. It's only when the Flickerer gets dead that stuff actually happens. Number 9 would be Mortal Pomposity. It's just basically set up again. Number 8 is Daleks of the Apocalypse Part 1. Set up, but stuff happens. Number 7 would be Daleks of the Apocalypse Part 2. Okay, the first story where things actually do happen, but it's the least interesting of them all. I think it's a good story, but it's just not as great as some of the others in this wave. Number 6 is The Deadly Killer. It's a bit of a detour episode, really. It's only there to introduce Jim, but it's fun, and also to bring back the scientist. But it's fun, entertaining, and it's a really enjoyable story, and I think a lot of people will like it. Well, I certainly did. Number 5 is Flicker. It is a very good way to introduce the Flickerer, and is a very good historical story in a way. Further develops the relationship between the three companions, as well as the performances and chemistry. Number 4 is The Corner of the Universe. I just really liked this story and how really good it is. And this one has a bit more of a point than Deadly Killer, as it's got the Sideman spaceship. This is where they're going to end up later on with my number 3 choice, Martin's Last Spark, Part 2. Number 2 is the most popular story in this wave, apart from possibly Martin's Last Spark, The Storyteller. And number one is, of course, my favourite of this wave, and one of my favourites of the year, 5 credits a month. So that's my ranking of the Darker Paths stories. That's it from Martin's Last Bark, Part 2. Next time, I'm expecting a war of the Doctors. Next time, we'll be starting the big 6-part multi-Doctor special, War of the Doctors. Starting off with Part 1. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nick Payne Extra YouTube channel.